National Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the National Fire Radio podcast. I am Jeremy, the host of the National Fire Radio daily episodes on the audio channels. Thank you for joining us. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you've been here before, thank you. What we could ask, and what I do ask, is like, share, follow, subscribe to the channels on whatever audio platform you listen to, because it does help us in the ratings and it helps us push this forward. We have had unbelievable support by this community, and I am so proud and honored, and it holds us accountable to make sure that we continue to push out the very best content we can possibly give you. This week, April 17th, 2023, leading into FDIC. This is the week prior to FDIC. This means all of our loose ends have to be tied up before we leave this coming weekend as we head out for the week in Indy. FDIC, if you've never been, I suggest you try to get there. I know that there's conversations about it's expensive and it's hard to get there. It's hard to take a few days off. It's hard to afford it. I get that. But this is the largest trade show in America in regards to the fire service. And so if you can or have the opportunity to get there, please try to make that trip. I promise you this, between the exhibition and the hot training, it's the brotherhood and sisterhood that goes on there, and the networking and connecting. It is incredible. If you have the opportunity to get to FDIC, I strongly recommend you try to get there. Let me talk about a few things leading up to FDIC. The 2448 podcast. You'll hear an advertisement for them during the podcast. We are joining forces at FDIC this year. We're going to be in booth 13073 in the main corridor. We're going to be live podcasting from the booth during FDIC. Come find us. We're going to have guests and manufacturers in the booth having conversations, as well as doing some question and answer stuff and everything else in between. That's going to be a lot of fun. So come find us in booth 13073 in partnership with the 2448 podcast. A couple other things this week. Training partners. National Fire Radio presents Training Partners. You're going to hear about this in one of the podcasts this week about what Training Partners is all about. Something new that we're getting into, and we are very, very excited about that, and to share that with you, our community, this audience that has been so incredibly supportive. We are excited to bring you even more content in a different lane. Let's go. FDIC, we're going to be there. Like I said, we got a bunch of projects with a bunch of different manufacturers. Pip from the Size Up, he's going to be working with Mercedes Textiles and doing some health and wellness stuff from the Mercedes booth, and we'll get you more information on that. Our large project this year, we're going to be working with Rev Group. Rev Group is the parent company to many different manufacturing brands of fire apparatus. We'll be in Rev Group's booth this year. We're going to be there Thursday and Friday from 2 to 4 both days. We're going to be doing live walkarounds of the TDA on Thursday. They're going to have a tractor drawn aerial there. We're going to be doing a live walkaround with Steve Crothers and the crew from Tractor Drawn Aerial, as well as the aerial specialist from Rev Group. So look for that. And then after that, we're throwing a happy hour. It's Tiller time in the Rev booth. Join us in the Rev booth on Thursday from 2 to 4 for It's Tiller Time happy hour. And then on Friday, we're going to be doing a walk around on one of their brush trucks and their electric engine. We're going to be doing a walk around as well. And the crowd can follow us as we do our apparatus innovation type content. And then obviously it's happy hour, and we're going to share a few cold ones with the people coming through the booth. So that's in the Rev Group booth on Thursday and Friday from 2 to 4. We're looking forward to meeting you, seeing you, taking pictures, and just having great conversations and tell you what we're doing at FDIC. And lastly, I want to talk about this, our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this podcast channel just isn't possible. And so please, give us another minute or two of your time before we roll into the daily episode and give our sponsors a listen. Our first sponsor of the podcast, Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew from Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing metal helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 metal fronts in the market, they are a leader in the metal helmet front space. Their creativity as well as customer service sets them apart from the competition. They are manufacturing one-offs within 24 to 48 hours to ship to your door. Not only that, but head over to taylorstins.com and you'll see all the other products that they offer. Right now on their homepage, they have a whole page dedicated to vintage metal prints. It's so cool to see the original prints of the fire apparatus, fire hydrants, fire helmets, fire boots, flashlights. It's so cool. They are printed metal tins that hang on the wall that are aged and look to be from the original days of when these prints were drawn, looking for copyright and trademarks. It's really cool. Taylor and his crew are super creative. They're always pushing the envelope as to what products they offer to the fire service. Check them out at www.taylorstins.com. That's, again, taylorstins.com to get a hold of Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather. This episode's brought to you by the 2448 Podcast. If you're a first responder with an entrepreneurial streak, check out the 2448 Podcast. Hosted by Sam Massa, who built lighting company High-Vis LEDs. During his off time, he serves as a volunteer firefighter and professional EMT. Each week, we tell the stories of different first responder-owned businesses, from small startups to food trucks to companies like National Fire Radio and Fire Department Coffee. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Go to the2448.com for more information. That's www.the2448.com for more information about this killer podcast. And if you're coming to FDIC this year, join us in booth 13073, right by the entrance in the main hallway, where National Fire Radio, yes, us, in conjunction with the 2448 Podcast, will be teamed up for live shows throughout the duration of FDIC. It's going to be a killer week out in Indy. Join us at booth 13073 right in the main hallway, where you come right into the convention center. We're going to be right there live broadcasting throughout the week. Come see us. Guys, thanks for checking it out. Check out the 2448 Podcast. And now, without further ado, the daily episode.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 52 of At the Coffee Table Podcast. I'm Jason Klink, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Jeremy Donch. He's a past chief of the Franklin Lake Fire Department in New Jersey and spokesperson, I guess you could say, for National Fire Radio, one of the founders of National Fire Radio. I wanted Jeremy to come on. I thought it was a good opportunity. I'm a big fan of their content that National Fire Radio puts out, and I love the content that Jeremy puts out personally and some of the conversations that he has about firehouse life, being in the fire service. So, Jeremy, thanks for joining me here today.
No, absolutely. I'm honored, man. This is cool. It's always fun to talk shop. So I'm in 100%.
Awesome. So why don't you give everybody kind of your background in the fire service and how National Fire Radio got started?
Yeah. So been a fireman for 25 years, second generation. Absolutely in love with it from day one. I was a student of it from when I was probably 10 years old on, right? It was that, I consider myself very fortunate to be a second generation firefighter, because that gives me the ability as a kid to be influenced by it. Right. And so growing up, it was the nostalgia of the badass guys that were, racing down the road, going to fires. And, as a kid, it's just so impactful. And to be able to, watch my father be able to do that, and it put him up on a pedestal, if you will, of just puts him above anybody else's father, it's just so cool. And so, that had a huge influence on my upbringing, had a big influence as to how I fell in love with the job, and so on. And so fast forward, old enough to become a firefighter, volunteer, that is, I was able to get into the firehouse. And from that point forward, it just really has shaped me and my life and my family's upbringing and life, and the values that come out of it, and I pass on to my kids and my family. It's just an incredible experience. And it's very hard to explain that to people that aren't in this profession, or whether career or volunteer. And when I talk about the fire service, it's really, there's two, for people that aren't familiar, you have two types of firefighters. You have career, which is a paid responsibility. And then you have your volunteer side, which is, serving back to your community at no pay. It's done on your time and so on. So
Right.
So when we talk about it, I just talk about, firefighting in general and as the job, if you will, or the profession, and so on. And so I've been fortunate to be in a department that, takes great pride in being busy and active and aggressive fire department, and so on. So up through my whole upbringing and then into the firehouse, it fell in love with it. And I'm more in love with it today, 26 years now into it. I'm more in love with the fire service today than I've ever been. And I turned 44 years old this year. And about 4 years ago, I said to my wife, 40 years old, I said, I really wanted to do something different for the fire service, that I just thought there was a gap. And I said, it's always been a passion of mine, and I wanted to turn it into more of a full-time thing for myself, instead of just volunteering and going to fires and so on. And so she said, well, go after your passion. And so at that point, I really wanted to, I thought about different ways, and I felt that the current market of how we talk about the fire service is very much steeped in tradition, but those traditions have changed. And if we don't change with the times, the message gets lost. And so what I was finding was there's a huge disconnect between the young and old, and the divide was getting greater and greater. And so we have to find ways. We have to be responsible in any industry, but in this case, the fire service, we have to find a way to bridge that gap between young and old.
Right.
Old school technology and know-how versus the new school technology and know-how. And so, and somebody has to facilitate that conversation, and somebody has to do that education. And so that's where I thought there was a big hole. And so, in 2018. I started National Fire Radio, which was strictly a podcast at the time, and some social media, but it was really a podcast that was started in my in-laws' garage with a makeshift studio. I mean, it was ridiculous,
awesome.
Right? We can get into all that too, but
right.
Excuse me. And so we start this podcast. Buddy of mine, Rob Ridley, who is my partner in this, and then Sebastian Rollo and Tucker Daly, and the list goes on and on of people that have helped us over time. But Rob and I really, and Sebi, the three of us, from day one, I kind of hooked these guys into this, and they had no idea what they were getting in for. But when I get involved in something, I kind of just go. And and what happened with this, truthfully, was the podcast started out, and I knew there was a gap. I'm sorry, my phones are in here. I knew there was a gap. And we weren't getting that message out. So the goal of the podcast, like in the fire service, we value the senior man, the guys that have been there a very long time. And we need to capture their stories, and then we need to share those stories and make them relatable to the new kids today, because that's how you continue the foundation that they laid. Their stories carry on. That influences the next generation who's making those decisions. And so the podcast was very much about that. And man, did it just went quick. And the podcast was fun. I love it. I love capturing the stories of guys and being able to share them. And we truly bridge that gap between the young and old. And that's the goal of National Fire Radio. And it's snowballed from there. We've become a full social media and podcast platform in regards to the American Fire Service. We're on all the social media channels and the podcast and so on. So we have a lot going on, but it was really just the love and passion I have for the fire service is what really created the platform and what pushes me every single day now with what we do.
That's awesome. And listening to you talk, it makes me think, I think you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth, so to say. Same thing. I grew up in a firehouse. My father was a volunteer firefighter for 33 years, past assistant chief. And from the age of probably 12 or 13, I knew I wanted to be in the fire service. So I spent about 20 years in the Mattydale Fire Department, where I'm a past chief. Retired from there. Spent 4 or 5 years as a DOD firefighter, trying to be a career firefighter. I went all up and down the East Coast taking civil service tests. Sure. I just wanted to be a firefighter. Sure. Got a job with the Federal Fire Service, and I thought it was pretty awesome. Tough work schedule even back then. Now we're talking like 2 decades ago. So I ended up starting a career with 911, but still in public safety.
Sure.
Then my last few years I spent in the Fairmount Fire Department before I hung up my helmet and gear for good. And my helmets became showpieces, I guess you could say.
Right.
But it's that, I like how you tell you, it's that same drive and the same motivation and wanting, trying to be the best. I think that's what you said. Your department's always looking for the way to try to be the best, to try to do the best.
For sure. And, it has a lot to do with, the fundamental foundations of the fire service is all about them and not about us. Right. So when whether it's a career or volunteer, you're signing up for a very interesting profession, right? Yes. Because you're willing to lay down your life for somebody else. And as cliche as that sounds, right?
It
happens. It happens a lot. And and we put ourselves in harm's way every single day for complete strangers and people we don't know. Yep. And there's just something about that, because it's not for everybody. And a lot of people really can't fathom or understand what goes into that. Right. And, and so for that part of it, that kind of creates the culture of who you are. Right. And then the influences you have. I grew up understanding this, calling, if you will. I understood the sacrifices my father made and the birthdays and holidays he wasn't at, and, and the late nights at the fire and then going to his real job the next day. I understand that. And I live it today. And so it's not for everybody. But what that does is that lays a serious foundation. And I think for me, that upbringing has really made me who I am today. It's been incredibly impactful and influential on me. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And with that comes the value of service, the value of respect for others, the value of compassion. There's so much wrapped up into all of this. And it really is like the full, the full package, if you will. Yeah. And it's impactful for sure. Yeah. It affects your every day.
Absolutely. And, I grew up idolizing and watching the guys that my father worked side by side with, and the hours and days they would spend at the firehouse training and taking care of the equipment and just finding ways to do business better. And that instilled in me that sense of service, that sense of drive in the fire service. And it me and some other guys that I had, guys and girls that I had, grew up with in the firehouse, we all watched this and took it to heart and took it and ingrained it in our own work ethic when it came to our turn to work in the firehouse. And
for sure.
It's just one of those things that, and now that I'm one of the old guys, at 47, I'm one of the old guys. I see some of the kids that I had the opportunity to train as they were young firemen. They were coming up, and now they're station captains, and I get a sense of accomplishment from that. But then I turn around and the volunteer fire service here in upstate New York, I don't know about downstate, but upstate, it's in a tough way. The volunteers just aren't there anymore. There's a lot of relying on the department next door or departments next door in order to get the job done.
It's everywhere.
Have you noticed that same kind of shift since we started, 25 years ago?
But 25 years ago, we were also having the same conversations too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, it's funny because you consistently hear the same conversation over and over and over. And what it comes down to truly is, what are you doing about it? Right. The culture, the type of department you have and the culture you have set forward. For myself with National Fire Radio, I travel all over the country. We see different fire departments in all different states. We see career, we see volunteer, we see paid on call, you name it. We've done it. We've documented it. We've talked to people and so on. The volunteer fire service in the United States is suffering.
Yes.
Big time. And it's not a regional thing. It's all over. And it could be from your affluent communities down to your very tough inner cities that still maintain a volunteer service, right? And everything in between. It doesn't have so much to do, in my eyes, it doesn't have so much to do with the demographics of the area. It has everything to do with time. Yes. When you start thinking about conversations of, when you engage somebody, what do they always complain about? They don't complain about money, really. I mean, everybody would love to have some more money in their pocket, but, nobody complains about money. They complain about time. I just don't have time.
Yep.
I'm running out of time. I owed you a bio for this show today. It took me 3 weeks to get it to you because it's, like everything in life, right? You have to prioritize because we're so inundated. And today more than ever,
I think we are truly busier because we're more engaged on a higher level than we ever used to be. When
Yes.
people worked, I mean, when my father used to work, he'd come home from work and he'd turn it off. Right. Like you have that separation. You no longer in today's society have a separation from anything.
Right.
I mean, you're always engaged. This device right here, which is probably the most influential, invention ever. Right.
Yes. Yep.
What this does, though, is this now holds us accountable 24 hours a day.
Right.
And so you don't have the ability to turn it off. And so where I'm going with this is that times have changed. People's priorities are different. A lot of, years ago, Main Street USA, July 4th parades and civic-minded people, it's because they were able to compartmentalize lives. And so they had that time because nothing else was filling the gaps at the time. And now you don't really have gaps anymore because when you do have a 5-minute gap, it's this. Right.
Yes.
It's you're staying engaged more. And so for me, the way I view it is very simply this, that civic-minded, more spare time, and true. I mean, economics have something to do with it. 2 jobs, kids have sports. I find a lot of guys in my area, as they develop and grow up with families, their time dwindles because obviously they want to spend more time with their families and their children, and then sports and activities, and the list goes on and on. Right.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, that is truly what I think is affecting the volunteer fire service in the country is time.
Yeah.
We talk, they talk a lot about, the training, we require more than we ever used to and things like that. And I'm not a proponent of saying, yeah, we need to reduce training or anything else. I think you need to be in a profession like this. And again, profession, whether you're getting a paycheck or not, it's a profession and you need to be proficient 100%. And you need to have top shelf training. Yep. Times have changed. Our environments have changed. Fires have changed. Building construction has changed. Everything changes over time. So you have to stay current. So the training is just part of the aspect of time. And so what we need is more time. But unfortunately, that's what's working against us. And so it's becoming a challenge for sure. And you're seeing it up where you are. We're seeing it down here. What it takes is proactive, forward thinking by the leadership and the members to admit there's a problem, and then you go find a solution.
And I think that's the biggest hang up with the fire service is admitting there's a problem, admitting there's an issue, and doing something to fix it.
Head in the sand all the time.
Change in the fire service comes slow. Every fire department in the U.S. hates change. It's slow to come by. I recognize
we hate change, but we want change.
We want change.
Which is the funniest thing, right?
100 years of progress being impeded by tradition.
Right. Of
course. I recognized 15, 16 years ago when I was a chief officer that we were starting to go down a road where it was going to get a lot tougher to keep butts in the seats. And it was going to really take some forward thinking, like you said, and creative thinking in order to get butts in the seats when it counts. There's some departments around me that have done really well with it. They have bunk-in programs and live-in programs and benefits to the members to be in the fire station. So there's some departments around me that do super good at it. Other ones, they keep trudging along like it's 1996 and hope that if they, hit the tones enough that somebody's going to show up. And I think that in this day and age, because of time and that everybody schedules every hour of their day, that even the volunteers should be able to schedule their time in the firehouse, unfortunately.
This episode's brought to you by Fast Rescue Solutions. Fast Rescue Solutions was created with the mission to develop products and training that surpass currently accepted industry standards and that meet the operational challenges of the real world. Their mission is, always has been, and it always will be to revolutionize rescue and save lives. Fulfilling both the mission and the vision, the Fastboard is a disruptive technology in rescue, invented by 28-year Philadelphia firefighter Eric Allen, who has over 20 years in the Philadelphia Fire Department Special Operations Unit. Nationally, the average time for rescuing a downed firefighter is 15 to 20 minutes using 5 or more members. The Fastboard has the ability to reduce that time to 5 minutes or less. using only 2 to 3 members, which is 500 times faster than the national average. Originally designed to get a firefighter down and out of a basement, the Fastboard has been proven effective in nearly every rescue situation. RIT, confined space, trench and ice water rescue, hazmat, mass casualty, and the list goes on and on. Its simplicity and versatility make it a game changer. I've been calling it a game changer for the last 5 years, and it truly is changing the way firefighter removal and rescue and civilian rescue is being done. Come find them at FDIC. They'll be at booth 13120 in the Capitol Corridor. Also this year, it's known as Firefighter Row. There's a ton of firefighter-owned businesses out in that Capitol Corridor. That's where you want to be, supporting our own. Stop in and see the crew from the Fast Rescue Solutions for live demos and meet the tribe. Their tribe, there's nothing better than that. This is tried and true brothers and sisters that are into the game, and they are making the job better. Join them Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of FDIC week from 3 to 5 in the main corridor, and you can have a cold one with them for happy hour. Come down, meet the crew, let them know who you are, and let them show you why they're changing the game. Fast Rescue Solutions, changing the game in the way we're protecting our own and the civilians we're sworn to protect. Check them out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot to all that, right? But like at the end of the day, where like my personal take on everything is accountability, personal accountability, right? Mm-hmm. When you take on whether your profession, your career, you're married, so you have a spouse, you have decided to have children, you have children, right? You're a volunteer fireman or career fireman. These are all things in life that you have to be accountable for, and I think what's happening more and more is that there's a lack of self-accountability. There's a lack of responsibility as well. Mm-hmm. We love, there are a lot of people. I mean, I'm a call it as it is type of guy. And there's a lot of people in this world that love to point fingers, and there's a lot of people that love to point at fault. Yes. And how many guys are stepping up and saying, mm-hmm. we have a problem, we're going to make a change? Not many. Many people love to point out flaws. People love to point out the issues, but how many people are willing to get in the trenches and fix it, or try to facilitate the conversation to have changes happen? Mm-hmm. And so that comes down to the accountability, right? That comes down to, you're the chief of a department that's not being progressive and proactive at recruiting and retaining members and addressing the problems. Or you're a chief that's been there for 26 years in the chief position. In the volunteer world, it's very popular all over the country. Oh, yeah. I talk to people all over the country who are stymied in their positions, that they have people in their departments that want to do more and be better, but they're held down. And a lot of times that comes from just the fact that, complacency, and people aren't comfortable with change and forward progression because they might be forgotten. Most people who limit forward progression and let their people do their thing have lack of confidence in their own skills sets, mindset. And the fact that they haven't kept up and remained active in their training and understanding of new concepts and new methodology and tactics. And so, this is very prevalent, and this happens career or volunteer fire service. You have leaders that don't lead. You have leaders that hold their people back and don't allow organizations to flourish.
Yep. And just to touch on that, leaders that lead, and I talk about this because I do some consulting work, and I talk about it with the consulting work, is that leaders lead. You lead your group, you empower your group, you allow your team to take, personal investment into what you're trying to accomplish, whatever the mission might be. If you're a manager and you're just going through each day and just putting out fires because that's what you do, and you just take one crisis at a time, that's where I think that a lot of fire service leaders could learn from. I talked about, I had the ability to learn from I probably was in a volunteer firehouse with probably some of the best firefighters I ever got to work with, and that's career and volunteer, because I worked for DOD, and those firefighters that I worked with were outstanding. But some of the best firefighters that I've ever worked with not only started in the volunteer ranks, they went through and spent many years, decades, and a lot of them went on to be career firefighters. And now it's just, there, because of time constraints, because everybody's working 2 and 3 jobs, you don't have that large influx of people. And when they are there, they're there for a short period of time, and then they get consumed by whatever, and probably for good reason.
But don't forget that we need, like, if you're going to be there, right, we need to get the maximum out of them when they can be there.
Right.
And so, that comes down to really a sure leadership in a position where you want to maximize your people to the most potential they can give you in the amount of time they can give you. Yes. And I think that message gets lost because we like to hold people accountable when it's convenient, Yeah. And when you think about that, it's some things aren't an issue, and then petty things become an issue, and so the consistency and all of that becomes troubling. And so it's tough, man. It's tough to be a valued, strong leader with conviction and understanding how to control people, how to manage people, and how to boost people up. But some of the best managers I've ever seen are people that let their people do what they do best.
Absolutely. Let them do what they do best. Let them do their jobs and let them make a decision. If it's the right decision, pat them on the back. If it's the wrong decision, then let's talk about it and see how we can do this better.
For sure. And there's always a way to correct, and not all of us are perfect, and leaders that can admit fault up front, leaders that can admit, that they're looking for ideas and creativity and truly value what the people will put forward. Those people will work harder. I know some incredible bosses that their people will do anything for them. And it's because they have that mutual respect and understanding of each other's positions, and then that common ground that they both make each other better. Yes. And when you have an environment like that, whether it's in the private sector, in the fire service, or anywhere else in between, that's where success comes from. But if you don't have that, success is so far off.
Yeah, no doubt. I laugh now when I think about it, but when I was fire chief, the guys and girls, if they needed something and I was the only one in the building, and it could be a maintenance issue with one of the trucks, and they'd walk in, Chief, I gotta tell you about this. And I'd always be like, hang on, is this something going on with the trucks, a maintenance issue? Yeah. Did you talk to the lieutenant or captain that's in charge of that first before you came walking in here to tell me? Well, no. Go start with them. Go talk to them, see if they have a solution for you. If they need me to know, they'll tell me about it. And usually they'd kind of look at you. But that was me trying to empower my line officers to be line officers.
Sure. And setting the culture for your people to understand that there's a chain of command, and that, they need to empower, the people need to empower the leader needs to empower the people, and everything works itself out for sure. And for sure.
Yep. It was an interesting ride for me. I say all the time that I miss the fire service. I miss doing the job. I don't miss a lot of the crap that came along with being in charge of doing the job, but I miss doing the job every day. I miss riding fire truck, driving fire truck. But like you said, for me, it's time. And I started out as a junior fireman at 14 years old. And by the time I was done, I was, 42. So I could never envision myself walking away from it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Just couldn't. I have so many irons in the fire, and yet I still value that engine. I still value going to fires. And I think for me, this is me, right? And the reason why I say that is because I'm so in love with the craft of it. I am so in love with getting dirty, getting beaten up, challenging myself, working. I mean, there is nothing, literally nothing better than a good fire coming out and just getting and regrouping with your crew and just having an incredible conversation, because nowhere, unless you're in an environment like that, could you ever understand the power of that conversation and the power of what everybody just went through to a successful conclusion, right? Making that push and then holding yourself accountable for it, and holding yourself accountable if you didn't follow through on what you should have done or you could have done better, and understanding that. Some of my favorite pictures from the fireground are when you're out and you're regrouping with your crew. I mean, the power of that conversation, I can't even put it into words. what you feel. And people that aren't in the fire service just they couldn't fathom. I mean,
No.
military, police, things like that, where you're challenged under unbelievable conditions to perform, and you perform well and you do your job. And, we don't come out looking for recognition. We come out to high five each other and say, man, that went great. What an incredible, experience. But what could we have done better? We build our crew from that.
Absolutely.
We get stronger and we learn
Yep.
from it. But that, to me, man, I have to have that in my life. And that's what pushes me, man, because
Right.
that's the challenge. I mean, I enjoy everything else I do in life. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a lot going on, but man, there is nothing better than to first do fire and going to work and everything that comes from that. The self push of yourself and testing your own limits, putting yourself through what you just went through, but also the aftermath and the camaraderie and the closeness and brotherhood you have with the people that you're with, and that what you share is just indescribable, truly.
It's so, I'm sitting here thinking that I have more stories, and so my wife, she's never been anywhere around the firehouse, doesn't know anything about public safety. So I'll try to share stories that pop into my brain every now and again, but she kind of, humors me and goes along with it. And so I don't have anybody to tell stories to. And I tell you what, I remember a lot of the good stuff. I remember every mistake.
Sure.
Realistically these days for me, outside of an odd conversation, the only one I have to talk about the fire service was my old man, but his fire service was from the early to mid 80s and mine was it was the early to mid 90s. So we a lot of times we have a very difference in opinion on stuff that's going on,
which makes for great storytelling.
Absolutely. And that's how this podcast was started. Just my memories of sitting in the firehouse, sitting in the kitchen, drinking whatever beverage, coffee, whatever. And like we were talking about off camera, was solving all the world's problems in an hour or two. We would talk about the fire service and cure every ailment of the fire service. And then we talk national news.
You have, in the firehouse, you have doctors, lawyers, accountants, and truly they might not be, but they're your sounding board, right? Like,
yes.
The interesting thing about the volunteer fire service is you get people from all walks of life, every single type of profession, from doctors to, and everything in between, right? And so, you get that influence, but it's incredible to watch because what I always talk about in the fire service is it doesn't matter. People outside of the fire service don't understand how you can be friends with an 18-year-old man and a 95-year-old gentleman,
right?
And everybody in between, because in the fire service there is no age. There's no age. We don't treat people different. In the real world, we do. We talk to people differently based upon where they are and compared to you in your life. And you talk to an 18-year-old kid, you treat him like more of a kid, if you will, and so on. And you coddle them maybe a little bit more. The older gentlemen, you show them, however you talk to older people, right? And then everything in between. But at the firehouse, there's no distinction. Like, I don't care what age because we're all doing that same job. Right. There's a mutual respect for everybody. There's a mutual understanding that we have a job to do and that we all treat each other as equals. And, with everything going on in this world, it's funny for me as a fireman to sit here and go what the fire service, I don't know. I mean, everybody is the same person in my eyes. Like you don't distinguish between race, ethnicity, religion. It's not even a question.
No.
Right. It doesn't even come up.
Right.
And when I wish the world could take a page out of the playbook of the American Fire Service when it comes to how to talk to people and how to deal with problems and how to treat people equally, because for so long in a profession where, at the end of the day, as cliche it is, it might be your last alarm. You put yourself in harm's way, right? Yep. Almost, daily. And so, what happens is like, we don't have time for all that nonsense in between. And so, not that we're perfect, not that the fire service is perfect, but man, for a long time, we've understood that whoever you are, doesn't matter, because when that bell goes off, there's one job that has to be done. Yep. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like or what you believe in. All I care about is you're going to be where you need to be when I need you to be there, because the team makes the job go. And so,
True.
Yeah.
So
right?
true.
So think about that. And so people outside of the fire service can't understand how when I have a barbecue at my house and it's an open invite, like always, right? Like I get 18-year-old guys from the firehouse, and I got guys in their, like 70s, 80s, and 90s showing up because we're brothers. It's the camaraderie. It's the love. It's that common love for the fire service, and then that mutual respect we have for one another, because nobody outside of what we do can even understand what we do. And so that part of it to me is the world. And I cherish that to no end. And so that's where, to bring it back around a little bit, that's what National Fire Radio really is all about, is sharing that passion and educating young and old about how important it is to take care of one another, to look out for one another, and to make this job continue to be the best thing ever.
Some of my closest friends to this day came from the firehouse.
For sure.
Hands down, 100%. My closest friends that I still interact with today came from the firehouse. Some of them are still in the fire service. And it's like you said, it's just, it is. It's that even across, where you stand for the most part with everybody in that fire station. Where you stand in their lives, and there's that mutual respect. There's that, like you said,
we don't pull any punches, brother.
No way.
We don't pull any punches. Like, I don't care who you are. You will be called out. Your bullshit doesn't fly. All of that. So that's the thing. That's the thing. That's where we don't tolerate the nonsense. And that's what I was referring to before. I don't care who you are. You're there to do that job. Let's do that job. And I don't care, I don't care what happened 20 minutes earlier. We'll talk about that later, right? Like, I don't care. You're up. I don't care. We're there to do this job. And then from that mutual respect of doing the job comes all the other stuff that is just incredible and powerful, right? The firehouse is an incredibly diverse place, incredibly diverse. But when it's time to go, it's go time. And there is nothing that can stand in the way of that.
No doubt. No doubt. Hey, what kind of great things do you have on the horizon for National Fire Radio?
Oh my God. We're starting to travel again. So we got some trips coming up. Part of what we do with National Fire Radio outside of the podcast and the social media hacks and things that we do. And when I say hacks, we love to share tips, tricks, and hacks within the fire service. So, whether you're in California, Alaska, Iowa, Texas, New Jersey, it doesn't matter. Right. But the fire service is very different depending on where you are. And so you're influenced by your region. And what we've been able to do with our platform is kind of educate firefighters across the country, let alone the world. I mean, it's crazy the impact, but on how people do it elsewhere, because sometimes there's a better way to do it. And if you've never seen it before or don't know about it, you're missing out. And so we've been able to, we do a lot of fire apparatus content where we talk about tips, tricks, and hacks on how people design, build, and operate their apparatus, which is just that's been super impactful for the platform. We do a lot of work with different manufacturers. So what we found very early on is that in this industry, a lot of the manufacturers are struggling to build creative that is appealing to the fire service and firefighters. A lot of it is polished corporate marketing and ad space that really nobody cares about. And it doesn't really sell the product or educate the consumer. And the consumer is me, you, and everybody else that uses it, right? So we work in conjunction with different manufacturers, building creative for their marketing teams so that they can kind of market and advertise from the inside out instead of from the outside in. And so that's been very good. We have some big projects coming up with that in the next few months. We do a lot of conferences. We like to see what's going on out there. We get invited to different conferences and do live podcasting and educational pieces and social media for different conferences. Some of my favorite stuff is moderating. I love to moderate roundtables. We do an event called the On Tap series, which is where we take over, we'll take over a tap house or a bar. You got a cover charge to come in, and we bring in an internationally recognized speaker. And instead of learning in a classroom setting, we turn it into what we call a brotherhood event with live podcasting, bagpipes playing. And then we get a live speaker for about 45 minutes to an hour to, you know, give that educational piece. And then the rest of the night is just a celebration of friendships and fellowship and brotherhood. So those events, unfortunately, during COVID really got put on the back burner.
Right.
But we're firing those back up as things are starting to happen again. So we always have a lot going on.
Good.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this industry just needs more.
Yes.
You know, something that's really cool for me is that when we started what we do 3 years ago, there wasn't a lot of extra influences in the fire service. You know, there were your main couple channels and platforms that had big influence in the service, but there wasn't much happening underneath that on the channels that matter. You know, when I say channels that matter, it's you got to look at where the attention is today. And if you're not, you know, look at you have a podcast. And why? Because audio is big and podcast helps build your business. Podcast helps build your brand, your personality, and everything else. Right. So understanding that and then relating that to the end consumer is so important. And so a lot of these more traditional platforms are missing the boat on that and have missed the boat on it. And
Right.
unfortunately now it is for a lot of them is playing catch up and it's too late. And so
Right.
the environment's changing in the American fire service very quickly. And a lot of people haven't even recognized that yet. And
Mhm.
so what's happening is that it's left a lot of opportunity on the table. And so, you know, anywhere where we can be to spread the word, get the message out there and create a presence is super important to me because our message is on point. And it's very much, you know, we are protecting and capturing the traditions and cultures of the fire service. And that to me is more important than anything. Tactics are important. Understanding how to train correctly. And so when we do go to work, we know and have the skills to do so, hugely important.
Mhm.
But we can't let the institution of the American Fire Service dwindle because we're not doing our part to make sure we're pushing that ahead. Right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
super important for us. And that's the mission. That's always been the mission. And that will continue to be the mission for a long time to come.
That's awesome.
Are you on Clubhouse?
I am.
Love it.
Yeah. It's a cool.
It is a game-changing platform.
Yes.
I moderated one last night and it was just incredible. I'm putting a lot behind it. There is a lot more coming out. Our club is growing pretty quickly and we're trying to grow the presence of fire service people on that platform. But there is just so much to that, man. And I am pumped. So I'm glad you're on that because I think there's a lot there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been checking it out and trying to find my place on that platform because, like you said, that is a game changer by far.
The potential on it is massive because you know the audio quality alone is fantastic, which is super important when you're doing anything like this, as you know. But you know, it also allows you to create a large influence on really a non-obstructed way. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and so last night we had some heavy hitters from the American Fire Service that were in that room last night and they're up on the stage talking. And, you know, there's 18, 19-year-old kids in there that were listening and they didn't even realize who these guys are. And so we can build a platform out where we can really capture the essence of who these bricklayers were in the fire service and share that. And these kids, if they didn't go to a conference or a chance encounter, would never have the ability to engage these fire service leaders.
Right.
And now on the Clubhouse platform, man, dude, like these kids can dial in, ask a question, and talk to some of the biggest names in the fire service from the comfort of their recliner. It just think about that. The potential on that's massive. So I love the platform. We're building it out. I host an open mic series on it, which is pretty cool. And so, you know, that type of content, man, you're going to see more of that. And, and that's the type of stuff that, you know, people got to be in tune with. You got to be able to pivot. You got to be able to, you know, I enjoyed COVID as much as it limited our travel. I enjoyed it because it kind of shook the American Fire Service in regards to the business end of things. It kind of set some people apart. There were hustlers that found and pivoted and found ways to produce content and continue their brand building. while others just packed it up for the year and wrote it off and said, we'll be back next year when things get better. And guess what? I mean, here we are in 2021 and we're in March. Things are getting better, but they're not there yet. And so, all these people that packed it up, see ya. You guys are going to be 18 months behind before when you get back out on the field. So
COVID was the reason I started this podcast.
There you go.
It was the reason I finally decided to take that jump off the cliff, because I don't know, I've said it before, I don't know if I would have started if I was still, doing other busy work that, it gave me the opportunity to start now it's hard to believe I'm 52 episodes into it.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
It really.
So I appreciate taking the time. I value your time, and I think we could sit here and talk shop for 2 hours. But I value your time here today. What's the best way for people to connect with you as far as social or otherwise?
Yeah, very easy. We're on all over social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. We're out there. It's just National Fire Radio. Email, if anybody wants to get a hold of me on email, it's just nationalfireradio@gmail.com. Kept that nice and simple.
Yep.
And so on. And you can go on our pages and you can find where we are, and we're very approachable. Authenticity and engagement is massive. We're transparent. We're 100% authentic. And at the end of the day, I try to answer, as many and all, if I can, DMs and emails and so on. So, and that's super important, because I do appreciate every single person that we could potentially impact is so good for the job. Yep. It's so good for the fire service. And so for me, it's incredible. The amount of people that reach out. I mean, we get people daily asking for advice and looking for opportunities and all this. And so it's healthy and it's good. And, the fire service is good. And I'm just such a proud supporter of it. And I love being heavily involved in it. It's just been awesome.
That's great. Well, like I said, Jeremy, thanks for taking the time to speak with me here today. I think, anybody that's involved in the fire service can pull a lot of value out of what we discussed and talked about here today.
Awesome.
And I hope that hopefully we can do it again here in the near future. I'd love to be able to bring you back on.
Yeah, man, it'd be great. We can certainly line that up, and I wish you much success with your podcast, and keep pushing, man, because the world needs more of this. So it's good.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Great. Give me your signature sign off.
Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
With that, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a great day.
Take care, brother.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week and listening to another episode on the National Fire Radio podcast channels. We truly appreciate the support. We thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to our interviews, our roundtables, our discussions. It means the world. Like, share, leave a comment. The more we engage, the more we can grow and push the word out and keep making this job better.
National Fire Radio.